Next we have Operations Management Planning Techniques, Module 5, Budgeting Part 1. These are the subunits we will be covering in this module: Operational and Technical Planning, Budget Policies, Standards and Benchmarking, Master Budget, Operational Budgets, Sales, Operational Budgets, Production and Direct Material, Direct Labor, and finally the Operational Budgets, Selling and Admin Expense Budget. Let us discuss first the Operational and Technical Planning. What are operational and tactical plans? Tactical plans are short-term plans up to 1 year, up to 18 months. Tactical plans are mid-range. And operational plan, on the other hand, they are prepared on monthly basis or maybe on weekly basis. Single-use plans. We make some operational and tactical plans to determine the specific objectives and how we are going to achieve our strategic goals using the tactical and operational planning. So basically, tactical plans are also known as single-use plans because they are established to apply to a specific circumstance for a certain period of time, 1 year, 1 quarter. Annual budget is also one of the tactical plans or single-use plan. We use budgets to transform or translate our strategic plans into more actionable information for a particular specified period of time. Let's say we want to increase our market share by 20% in the next 10 years. That's our long-term strategic plan. How we are going to achieve it on annual basis, this is reflected in your annual budgets, right? So budgets translate the strategic plan and implementation plan into a period specific operational guide on yearly basis or on quarterly basis. Next subunit is budget policies. Budget policies, budget guidelines, what they are. Budget is a process normally involves setting up of a budget committee at the top. You will have a budget committee at the top which will be composed of senior management. It will involve the departmental heads of different departments. So budget committee is responsible to manage the budgeting process. If there are some infighting, some disputes between different departments, different functions, budget committee will resolve those disputes, and budget committee is the authority to make the final decision regarding any major changes in the budgets. So top management will provide the guidelines based upon strategic goals, based upon the company's long-term plan. It should include evaluation of current conditions. Evaluation of current conditions mean what are the changes that have occurred or are occurring in the environment in which we are operating. Business is not operating in isolation. Business gets influenced from the environment in which it is operating. Economic environment, social environment, legal environment, technological environment. So evaluation of current conditions, changes in the environment, what the goals a business or this specific business is attempting to achieve. What were the results in the last year? So these are the factors, the conditions must be evaluated. Then after this evaluation, management will set the budget if it's an authoritative budget. The management will set the tone at the top. What is the budget for? Is it for cost containment? Is it for market share maximization? Is it for innovation? Or so on and so forth. So this is how the instructions are passed down from top to the bottom in the form of budget guidelines, and budget committee is the body responsible for managing the whole budget process. They are the one responsible for resolving disputes, and they are the one responsible for making any major changes in the budgets. Next is the standards and benchmarking. What are standards and benchmarks? Standards are our expectations of the cost based upon our detailed studies of cost build-up. Standards are expressed on per unit basis, and they are extremely important for developing budgets. And they in fact are our yardsticks, our benchmarks against which we will compare the performance of our staff members, our sales staff, production and so on. There are two types of standards: the ideal standards and the currently attainable standards. Standards should be set below the expectation levels so that the staff can find these standards as attainable. If the standards are too stiff, too hard to attain, then this will demotivate. Standards must be revised periodically, at least once a year. Best standard is the standard that leads to accomplishment of strategic goals. So there are two extreme positions. One is the ideal standard. Ideal standard is based upon the assumption that the resources will be used most efficiently, most effectively. The installed capacity will be utilized up to 100%. They are not based upon what we did last year or the year before that. They are forward looking, and there is no room or no provision for spoilage. You need to produce the good correct the first time. No spoilage is allowed. No downtime is allowed. This is quite a stiff standard. If we set ideal standard for budgeting, this will demotivate our staff because this is viewed as unattainable. So advantages is that we set quite a challenging task, and it would result in continuous improvement for the business. It will result in productivity gains, more profit for the firm. Disadvantages are that these standards might be deemed as unattainable by the employees. Employees might feel demotivated, and it will affect their efficiency. Then we have another extreme, not extreme, the other type is currently attainable standards. We expect our workers to perform normally. We do not expect any extraordinary effort. We assume that workers are properly trained, they have proper experience. Based upon our past historical production record, this is what we can produce. We can produce 90,000 units on an annual basis. So in currently attainable standards, we set certain provision for spoilage. There is some provision for downtime. Machines may have to be shut down for some time for preventive maintenance. There will be some spoilage during the production process. So advantages of currently attainable standards for performance evaluation is that they are viewed as attainable. They will be buy-in by most of the staff members, and employees will be more motivated if the standards are set on currently attainable levels. And what are disadvantages? Since we are using the currently attainable level of production as our standards, so there is a use of judgment. There could be some manipulations, deliberately underestimating the level of production and effort so as to make your targets look more attainable. That's what you call the budgetary padding or budgetary slack. And these standards are since at less than optimal level, so they may not be good for the firm. They may not lower the cost of production, they may not result in efficiency, and they may not push the organization in the right direction for cost controlling purposes. Then we have another categorization of authoritative standards versus participative standards. Authoritative standards, as the name suggests, they are the standards set by the management, exclusively by the management. Management simply prepares the budgets and then simply imposes them, throws them down on the employee's head. The advantage is that they are implemented quickly. The cost is less. The management is able to see larger picture, so they can set up a budget that is more consistent across different functions, more aligned to the business strategic plan. But the drawback is that workers might not accept these imposed standards. They might show resentment, they might be demotivated, and they may not perform as expected because they were not taken into the loop when the budget was set. The next approach is the participative standards. These are the budgets set by the managers and individuals for whom the budget is being set up together. It's an approach in which the management and the employees work together. Advantages are that they are more likely to be adopted because workers see it as a participative standard where their input was taken. But disadvantage is that it takes more time, it involves more cost, and it might result in what you call the budgetary slack. Next we have what you call the master budget. What are master budget? Master budgets are also called annual profit plan, annual business plan, or comprehensive budget. So master budgets are the collection of your operating and financial budgets for a specific period of time. The purpose of master budget is to provide a comprehensive coordinated budget to be maintained for the coming period. It is used as a control tool. The master budget serves to communicate what the business wants to achieve, what is the plan of action. We use different terminologies for master budget. As I just told you, it is called comprehensive budget, also called the annual profit plan or the annual business plan. And how do we use it? Annual business plans are appropriate for most industries, but they are particularly useful in manufacturing setups because it requires more of coordination between production, sales, marketing, finance. So they are more useful in manufacturing organizations, large-scale manufacturing organizations. There are many components of the master budget. We'll discuss all these as we go along, but the end results are your pro forma financial statement. We will discuss that there are different types of operating budgets, different types of financial budgets, and they all add up to give you what you call the pro forma financial statement. Pro forma means budgeted financial statement. The meaning of pro forma is as if, almost virtual, means your budgeted or estimated financial statements. So we need to lay down our assumptions we use to set up these budgets. Pro forma financial statements are based upon some underlying assumptions. Are those assumptions realistic? Are those assumptions verifiable? And there are certain limitations also. The annual profit plan is normally made up for a certain level of output. Let's say we have made our annual budget or the master budget for 100,000 units of production and sales. But in reality, this is what you call the static budget. Master budget is a static budget. It is prepared for a single level of activity. But maybe during the period we might produce and sell more, or we might produce and sell less than the original quantity and prices set up in the master budget. So this is possible. The static budget may not be what we end up achieving in actual. Further, the end result of master budget are the pro forma financial statements, your balance sheet, income statement, projected cash flow statement, so on and so forth. So maybe the information contained in this pro forma financial statement may not be usable for the management at the decision making level. They need more detail. So that would be the limitation of your master budgets. Now this is how it all starts. We have our mission statement and strategy, which we discussed in our previous classes. Translation of this mission and strategy would result into some short-term objectives. And from these short-term objectives, the first budget we set up is the sales budget. Sales budget is the first budget we set up, and the cash budget is the last budget that is drawn up. Capital budget involves budgeting of long-term investments, property, plant and equipment. Now above the line, these budgets are called the operational budget. Production, material, labor, factory overhead, cost of goods sold, selling and admin budgets. They are called the operating budgets. But below this line, the cash budget is a financial budget. Your pro forma balance sheet is a financial budget. Your capital budget is a financial budget. Your cash flow statement is a financial budget. So there are 4 types of financial budgets: cash budget, budgeted balance sheet, capital budget, and the budgeted cash flow statement. We will discuss all these as we go along. Next, we have the sales budget. It's one of the operational budgets, and it's the starting point of our different types of budgeting setup. Sales budget basically is based upon the sales forecast, and that provides input to the production budget. Remember, you cannot set up your production, material, labor budget unless first you have the sales budget with you. Sales budget is the starting point, right? Sales budget is the input to your production budget. Sales budget is the input to your selling and administrative expense budget. Now, how do we set up sales budget? Where do we get the information from? This is given right here. Input from sales budget would come from past patterns of sales. We can use our historical sales trend, and then based upon this historical trend, we can extrapolate and set up our sales level for the coming year. So we can use our past patterns of sales as an input. We can take the estimate from our sales force, what we are going to sell in the coming period. We should also take into account the general economic conditions prevailing in the setup we are operating. We need to see what competitors are doing. If they are planning to expand their production, they expect the sales to go up, they expect growth in the market, and we may need to accordingly incorporate such assumptions into our budget preparation as well. Changes in the firm's price level will affect your levels of sales. Changes in the product mix. Let's say we sell 3 products ABC in proportion 10, 50 and 40%. Any change in this mix would result in changes in our sales revenue. You might have conducted some market research, and that market research would reveal what the level of sale you might expect in the coming period. And of course, your sale is driven by advertising and sales promotion. So what you have spent or what you are likely to spend on sales promotion and advertisement will establish the level of sales you should expect in the coming period. Okay, now this is a good example in point. It says Blanchfort Stereo is a retailer of audio equipment. Blanchfort sales manager is working with the controller to develop the sales budget for the next year. Blanchfort sales manager knows that sales volume is seasonal and that it can be influenced by price and by promotions. The sales manager has developed the following sales forecast based on units to be sold and average selling price. Assumptions for the forecast. First quarter sales are often weak. The sales manager projects the following sales volumes for aggregate units and average price. 2000 units at full retail price of 75, and if you could lower the price to 60 discounted price, the unit sale will go up 2500. Second quarter sales strengthen somewhat for graduation and Father's Day promotion. A greater volume and ability to collect full retail can be anticipated based on promotions. If you sell at full price 75, this is the volume. At a discount price of 60, the volume goes up to 4000. The third quarter sales historically declined despite summer vacation and back to school promotions. 75, 1500 volume at lowered price, the volume is 2000. Fourth quarter sales spike in response to holiday spending, could be 7,000 at 75 and 10,000 if the price is lowered to 60. Use the sale forecast to develop the sales budget, assuming that the company has selected a cost leadership strategy, which means you are expecting the discounted price to sell your goods at. So if you split your sales in the four quarters, quarter 1, 2, 3 and 4, so then you will be having 2500s to be sold at the rate of 60. For the second quarter, 4000 units at the rate of 60. For the third quarter, 1500 units or 2000 units at the rate of 50, and finally remember this is 2000. And for the quarter 4, it is going to be 10,000 units at the rate of 60 each. So if you multiply 2500 with the 60, it's going to be 150,000. 4000 times 60, that's going to be 240,000. 2000 times 50 is going to be $100,000, and 10,000 times 60, that is $600,000. If you add all these, you will get your annual sales figure, which is going to be $1.09 million. That's how you set up your sales budget. The next subunit is the operational budgets, production budget. I told you you cannot draw up your production budget until you know what you will sell. Like this is the input for our production budget. This is the units we are expecting to sell in these quarters, and these numbers will drive your production. How do we drive the production budget? We take the budgeted sales, let's say for quarter 1. We expect our quarter 1 sales to be 2500 based upon the previous example. We want 1000 units as a closing stock as per the company policy. It will be given to you in the question. So if you want to sell 2500 units in quarter 1 and you want to have 1000 units in the ending inventory, that means you should produce 3500 units, but not so fast. You will already have some units available with you in the beginning inventory. So you need to remove that from the production budget. So 2500 is what you want to sell. 1000 is what you want to have at the end of the period or end of the quarter. So you should produce 3500, but since you already have 700 units with you, that means you will produce 2800 units. This is what you do for each quarter, and that will help you decide how many units you will produce. Now this is it. Carlyle Manufacturing is trying to estimate the level of production for the month of June. Assume the Carlyle wants safety stock in the beginning inventory of 30% of estimated sales. Your stock each month is 30% of the next period sale. Or put it the way it is written here, your opening stock should be 30% of that month's sales. Opening stock is 30% of that month's sales, or in other words, your closing stock will be 30% of next month's sale. I'll explain this idea because sometimes you are given information or policy in one way, sometimes the other way. I will explain this concept. It says our June and July expected sales is given as follows. Compute the estimated inventory amounts and the estimated production for June. So let's do it. June, July. We have just learned that the starting point for production budget is the planned sales or the budgeted sales. Budget sales for June is 40,000 and budgeted sales for July is 30,000. To this we add our desired closing stock. Our desired closing stock is 30% of the next month's sales. 30% of next month's sale is 30,000 times 30, that is 9,000. And from this deduct the opening stock, which we already have in the previous period. The previous period's closing stock would be 30% of 40,000, that's going to be 12,000. That 12,000 will be the opening stock of June. Now listen to me very carefully. It says beginning inventory each month should be 30% of estimated sales. So your beginning inventory in June is 30% of June sale, or put it the other way, your closing stock in May is 30% of June sale. So they are exactly the same statements. It's just that they are two perspective. 30% of the current month sales is the opening stock, or 30% of next month sale is the previous period's closing stock. Please try to interpret and grasp the idea of what I'm saying. So nonetheless, I've got my production budget 40 plus 9, 49. 49 less 12, it means my planned production for the month of June is going to be 37,000 and 12,000 is the opening stock for the month of June, and 9,000 will be the closing stock of June, because next period sales 30% will be my closing stock and next period's 30% will be next period's opening stock. And that's true. My current year's period's closing stock 9,000 will be the opening stock for the next period, which is again 30% of 30,000. So that's the answer. So this is the formula I've used. Budgeted sales 40,000 in June, desired ending inventory 30% of July sales 9,000, less beginning inventory, which is 30% of June sales 12, and I get my answer 37,000. Other factors affecting the production budget. If company policy to maintain stable production, so you will see somewhat equal level of units produced every month. Condition of production equipment. If the production equipment is perfectly in good order, so we can produce more. Availability of productive resources, that is the direct material, direct labor. If they are easily available, then we may have a higher level of production depending on the expected sales. And experience with production yields and quality. How much do we get as an output when we input 100 units? How many units are finally produced which are perfectly in good shape to sell? And that's how we determine our production budget. Next one is the direct material purchase budget. Once we have established that what we are going to produce, like 37,000 units is per the previous example, based upon the production for the period coming, we can plan how much material do we need to purchase, what would be the labor cost and the labor hours required, and the corresponding factory overhead. So remember, sales budget is the input for production, and production budgets is input for the direct material, direct labor, and the factory overhead. And then these three will help you establish your budgeted cost of goods sold. So this is the format we will use to set up our direct material purchase budget. Let's say in the month of June, this is what we plan to produce. Units of direct material needed for production, 37,000. And let's say each unit requires 2 pounds of material, and then this will be then 74,000 pounds. That is what you call the material required for production. 37,000 units are to be produced. Each unit requires 2 pounds of material. 74,000 is the material needed for production. As per the company's policy, we should have 20,000 pounds of material in our closing stock, which means we should purchase 94,000 pounds of material as per the numbers. But if we already have 4,000 pounds of material available, that means we should purchase 90,000 pounds material. So the idea is pretty straightforward. This is what I want as my completed units. Each unit requires 2 pounds of material, which means my material requirement, mind the word, material requirement in June is 74,000 pounds. This is not what I'm going to purchase, because as per the policy, I should have 20,000 pounds in my stock. so as to allow smooth production. So which means I should purchase 94,000 pounds. But if I already have 4,000 pounds available in the beginning inventory, then that means I should purchase 90,000 pounds. That is the direct material purchase to be purchased in quantity. And if you want to establish the budget for cost, multiply 90,000 pounds with the current prevailing price. Let's say the price is $3 per pound. So that means 27 to 70,000 is the required material dollar purchase budget. Next is the direct material usage budget, or the cost of direct material used. Let's say the beginning inventory at cost was $50,000 worth of raw material. We purchased $150,000 worth of material during the current period. That means the material available for consumption was $200,000, 50,000 in the beginning stock and 150,000 worth of material purchase. So material available for consumption, $200,000. Now we use some of the material in production process, and at the end of the period or the end of the month, we still have $70,000 worth of material on hand, which means the material that is used up is 200 less 70, $130,000. This is what you call the materials used up, or the cost of material used, or the direct material consumed. Call it whatever you may. This is the material used up during the current period in production. Then next is the direct labor budget. I told you sales budget is the input for production budget. In other words, production budget is drawn up from the sales numbers. Once you have the production budget available, this would be the input to set up your direct material purchase budget and also the direct labor budget. That is what we are discussing right now. So taking that example, we plan to produce 37,000 units in June. That's the planned production or the budgeted production. Hours or fraction of hours required to produce each unit. Let's say, for the sake of simplicity, each unit of output requires 4 labor hours. 37,000 units to be produced, each requiring 4 hours. So that means we require 148,000 labor hours in the month of June. So this is the direct labor hour budget. How many hours do we need in the month of June? Accordingly, we can plan for the labor force. And then what is the rate we pay? Let's say our average rate is $15 per labor hour multiplied by 15. This will give you 2.22 million. This is the direct labor dollar budget. This was the direct labor hours budget. This is the direct labor dollar budget. So once we have the production budget, we can then draw up our factory overhead budgets. We know factory overhead involves some fixed part, fixed overheads, and some variable. Fixed overheads would consist on depreciation, insurance, property taxes, fixed salaries of production staff, and variable overheads would involve those overheads that change with the level of production: electricity, gas, water, indirect material, indirect labor. So what you would have in your production facility, you would have a rate which could be either a dual rate. Fixed overhead rate would be $5 per unit and variable overhead would be $3 per unit. So you could have either the separate rate for fixed and variable overhead, which we established at the start of the period. This is we have already discussed in our normal costing. Or you may have a composite rate, 5 plus 3, $8 per unit. This is the application rate. Each unit you produce carries $8 of fixed and variable cost with you. Overheads could be applied on the number of units basis, the way I told you a little while ago, or it could be applied based upon the machine hours or the labor hours. Like in this example, Carlisle Manufacturing uses direct labor hours as an activity base to apply the variable overheads and has determined that the variable overhead rate is 5 per hour. Assume that the company used 7,400 labor hours according to the direct labor budget. Then what would be the variable overhead budget? Simply multiply 74,000 with 5. This will be the overhead applied to production, and that's going to be $370,000. So once we have our direct material budget, labor budget, and overhead budget, then we can draw up our cost of goods sold budget. It's pretty straightforward. Let me show you. Once we have the direct material budget to be used plus the direct labor budget and the manufacturing overhead budget, direct material, labor and overhead, gives you what you call the cost of goods manufactured, assuming there is no work in process. So this is the cost of goods manufactured. To this add the beginning finished goods inventory, which you have in the beginning of the period, and from this deduct the estimated finished goods inventory, or what you call the finished goods inventory budget. So let's say if our cost of goods manufactured is $100,000 and the beginning inventory was $20,000, that means the goods available for sale as per the budget would be $120,000, and from this if we deduct the expected finished goods inventory of $30,000, this will give us the cost of goods sold budget, that is $90,000. It's fairly straightforward. Carlyle Manufacturing is preparing its budgeted cost of goods manufactured and budgeted cost of goods sold schedules for the month of June. It has developed the following information: desired materials used, that is direct material budget, direct labor, factory overhead variable and factory overhead fixed given. If you add all this, this will be the total manufacturing cost or the cost of goods manufactured because there is no work in process. So you have add all of these 4 items. What you get, it is 3.582 million. This is the cost of goods manufactured. If you add the finished goods beginning inventory of $1 million, this will give you the cost of goods available for sale, that is 4.582 million. And if from this you deduct your finished goods ending, this will give you the budgeted cost of goods sold, and that's going to be 3,832,000. It's as straightforward as that. Let us do a quick question that will refresh your understanding of direct material purchase budget, direct material used, labor hours budget, and the labor dollar budget. It's a fantastic question. Carlyle Manufacturing computed its budgeted production at 37,000 units to sustain the budgeted sales of 40,000 units. That's what you plan to produce to sell these units in June. 4 pounds of direct materials are needed to produce each unit of finished product. This is the planned production. Each unit requires 4 pounds of material. Keep that information in your head. We assume that the new direct material will cost 10 per pound and that they were previously inquired at $9 per pound. Okay. Carlyle has 48,000 pounds on hand, that is the opening stock of raw material at the beginning of June, and has a desired direct material ending inventory of $36,000. Please write these down. I'm going to plug in these numbers to do the computation and tell you how do we write up our direct material purchase budget. We needed to produce 37,000 units. Each unit requires 4 pounds of material. That means the pounds needed for production is 148,000. Right? Desired ending inventory at the end of the period. It is already given to you. We want to have 36,000 pounds in inventory. That means we should purchase these many units, but we already have 48,000 pounds available. So that means we need to purchase 136,000 pounds, and each pound's current price is $10 per pound. So it means your direct material purchase budget is 1.36 million. Cost per pound is 10. 136 pounds is needed, and that's the budget that you need to purchase. Now, direct material usage budget, or the direct material used, cost of direct material used budget. Remember from the information I told you to note it down, we had 48,000 pounds purchased previously at the cost of 9. So this is the beginning inventory at cost 432,000. The purchase at cost we just established right now 1.36 million. This is the direct material purchase budget. We want to have 36,000 pounds in the closing stock at the rate of 10. So that's going to be your closing stock cost. If you net all these, this is the direct material opening plus purchased, that will be the material available for consumption, less 360. So this is the cost of direct material to be used or used in production, 1.432 million. That is the direct material usage budget, or the cost of direct material use budget. The last part requires you to establish your direct labor budget. Since we need to produce 37,000 units and it says that 2 hours are needed, labor hours are needed to produce 1 unit. That means you require 37 times 2, 74,000 hours of production. 74,000 hours of production. And each hour is paid at the rate of $20. So that means you will have to incur 1.48 million direct labor cost. This is the direct labor hour budget, and this is the direct labor dollar, 1.48 million. The last budget we have is the operational budget, selling and admin expense budget. It's a pretty straightforward budget. This is prepared directly from sales. It doesn't depend upon the level of production. It is driven by sales. So there will be these components of selling and general admin budget. Variable selling expense will include estimated sales commission, delivery expense, estimated bad debts the customer might refuse to pay. Fixed selling involves salaries of the sales staff, advertising, depreciation of the equipments and vehicles used by the sales staff. General administrative expenses are usually fixed, all fixed. Administrative sales, accounting and data processing, depreciation and other administrative expenses. Most of the cases you will be given these because you will primarily be tested on production budget or cash collection budget. These are ancillary budgets not likely to be tested in exam. So that completes your module 5, budgeting part 1.